E ka moe omo. So good to have you join us. I'm Johnson Aida and welcome to the Pacific.
Si Ota Ofa, I'm Alice Lolo here. Here's what's coming up on the show today.
Planes grounded as Air Vanuatu collapses. What next for the embattled airline?
Tongan treasures made by foreign weavers.
And rugby fans left fuming in PNG, including a social media star, over a new fee to watch the NRL. But first, we're in New Caledonia, where France's President Emmanuel Macron has declared a state of emergency after at least 4 people were killed as violence engulfs the French territory. Schools are shut, the main airport is closed, TikTok has been banned, and 500 extra police are on their way from Paris. Riots broke out over a new bill that will let French residents who have lived in New Caledonia for 10 years vote in provincial elections, a move some local leaders fear will dilute the Indigenous Kanak vote. An eerie calm descends over the streets of Nouméa as locals wake to a city they don't recognise.
Maintenant, les jeunes se rebellent. La Nouvelle-Calédonie va mal, quoi. Nous, on n'a pas dormi depuis avant-hier. On n'a pas dormi de peur que les gens tirent sur les gens dans notre quartier.
As fires continue to burn, emergency responders assess the night's damage, while others keep watch.
Écoutez, nous on est là simplement pour sécuriser notre quartier, notre maison.
For the first time in 3 decades, a long-standing peace has ruptured. As protests against proposed changes to the French territory's electoral roll turned violent.
Je sais pas, il y a des jeunes qui nous ont caillassés, moi et puis mes parents. Du coup, on a repris la route et tout le long de la...
For days, chaos has reigned. Dozens of businesses have been destroyed, nearly 100 police officers have been injured, and at least 4 people have been killed. Some residents have set up defensive barricades, but there's also fears some are taking justice into their own hands.
Même moi, je vous avoue, je suis avec mon arme tout le temps pour parvenir à quelconque situation.
A curfew has been ordered and reinforcements sent from Paris to try and restore order.
Je travaille ici. Resto, je fais de la pizza. Grâce à ça que moi j'ai un loyer, j'ai quelque chose à la maison. Là, il y a une affaire pour moi.
So, what are the proposed changes that have sparked this wave of unrest? France's parliament is considering whether to allow thousands of mostly French-born New Caledonian residents to vote in local elections, a move many Kanaks say is being rushed through without consultation.
Mais nous, on a le fait que c'est des gens à 22 000 km qui débarquent et puis qui insistent sur le droit de vote.
New Caledonia's Indigenous Kanaks make up about half the territory's population, and many want to secede from France. After unrest in the 1980s, a series of referendums on the territory's sovereignty held legitimacy with both sides, until a final vote in 2021, when the French government denied a request to postpone during the pandemic, leading pro-independence voters to boycott and a landslide vote to remain French. But pro-independence leaders have never accepted the result, and since then, negotiations on a way forward have ground to a halt, with the issue of independence for many unresolved. As Nouméa burned, lawmakers in Paris met to vote on the proposed electoral reforms.
Ne vous inscrivez pas dans un processus de colonisation qui consiste à mettre en minorité un peuple sur sa propre terre.
The bill eventually passed 351 votes to 153. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal urged calm.
En Nouvelle-Calédonie, on connaît le lourd tribut de la violence.
Now President Macron has called for talks to be held in Paris with New Caledonia's leaders before a final vote in a joint sitting of both parliamentary chambers in coming months.
The key thing is that independence leaders want it looked at in New Caledonia, around a table, led by a dialogue mission. They no longer trust the senior leaders in France to conduct talks in Paris. They want them in New Caledonia.
Back in Noumea, independence groups and politicians have also called for the violence to end.
On ne peut pas se mettre tout d'un coup à détruire ce qu'on a construit difficilement depuis 1988 dans des conditions de paix qu'il a fallu.
La violence, non, mais d'une autre façon. Mais s'il faut que ça pète un bon moment, il faut que ça pète. Parce qu'en face, ils font les sourds. Parce qu'il y a eu des signes depuis qu'on a montré, toujours pacifiquement. Ils n'ont jamais tenu compte de tout ce qu'on a fait jusqu'à là.
The political impasse comes amid a worsening economic crisis, with the territory's vital nickel industry on the brink and an increasingly restless youth population starved of work and opportunities.
Les jeunes cherchent du travail, ils n'arrivent pas à trouver. Le gouvernement, ils ne font rien pour eux, et voilà ce qui arrive.
But those making trouble are the minority. Most people here just want to live in peace.
Il n'y a pas de politique dedans ma pizza, tu vois. Moi, je nourris des Blancs, je nourris des Kanaks, je nourris des Chinois, tu vois. Là, on n'a plus rien. Enfin, comment?
Now, a few weeks ago, we spoke with pro-independence politician Patricia Gore. Now, she told us about the growing frustration among Kanaks about France's unilateral push to amend voting laws and a lack of dialogue with independence leaders. Now, to unpack what happens from here, I'm joined by long-time New Caledonia watcher and island business correspondent Nick McClellan. Thank you for joining us, Nick. Now, I'm just going to get straight into it because these voting roll changes, they were a tactic to force both pro-independence and loyalist leaders back to the negotiating table. But what has gone so wrong?
The key leaders of the independence movement have been calling for a comprehensive agreement to replace the Noumea Accord. This was a framework agreement that's lasted for 25 years. One of the elements of that is to allow more long-term residents to become New Caledonian citizens, and they have the right to vote for New Caledonia's Provincial Assembly and Congress. But France is acting on this as a unilateral initiative just on the electoral reform without addressing other key concerns like really having a pathway towards a new political status, indeed an independent and sovereign nation.
Now, French President Emmanuel Macron's declaration of a state of emergency has given sweeping powers to the state to arrest and detain people, as well as banned apps like TikTok to stop spreading any information, in fact. Now, what impact do you think that will have on the ground?
It's a very worrying sign. It's the first time in 40 years since France has declared a state of emergency in New Caledonia under French law. The last time was in December 1984, the beginning of the armed conflict that divided the country in the mid-80s. These rules and regulations give enormous power to the French authorities, but there's growing concern amongst Kanak politicians and many community groups that the core underlying problems of poverty, of disadvantage and so on can't be addressed simply by policing. Already the French Overseas Minister has announced the house arrest of 5 so-called radical leaders from the Kanak movement, but the political problems can't be solved at the point of a gun.
How do you think New Caledonia's broader economic and social issues have played into this unrest?
It's been a difficult year for the people of New Caledonia in terms of the economy, jobs and livelihoods. One of the key industries is the nickel sector, both the mining and smelting of nickel ore. New Caledonia has really large reserves of this strategic metal, but they've been hit hard by rising energy costs, by competition from Chinese companies in Indonesia. The government under President Louis Mapu has been trying to bring in progressive tax reform to increase taxes on business houses and the wealthy, and that's been firmly resisted by wealthy members of the New Caledonian community. The disaster really of this last week with the destruction in Greater Noumea, the capital and surrounding towns, is going to be an enormous setback.
Now, Nick, we know that pro-independence and loyalist leaders have accepted an invitation to talks in Paris in the wake of the violence. Now, in your opinion, what's needed to restore peace and how can New Caledonia build from here?
There's been a breakdown of trust between the independence movement and Overseas Minister Gerald Darmanin, and indeed the President himself. And it will take some time to rebuild a level of trust that people are willing to make compromises necessary to bring together really polarised opinion between anti-independence parties and the Kanak people. What this crisis has really highlighted, though, is that there could be no political settlement without the Kanak people, without the indigenous Melanesian people of New Caledonia, who make up more than 40% of the population. There's a danger that France will try and forge its way ahead through during the state of emergency without really addressing long-standing cultural, political, social concerns of the Melanesian people, most of whom want an independent nation.
Thank you very much, Nick, for your time, and thank you for joining the Pacific.
Johns, thank you very much for hosting me.
To sport now, in rugby league to Papua New Guineans is like rugby sevens to Fijians. Every other sport comes second. The game holds a special place in the hearts of many locals, but a change in broadcast rights is leaving fans feeling shut out of the action. In Papua New Guinea, rugby league is more than just a sport. It's a way of life. It was once available to watch on TV for free, but viewers are now expected to pay over 100 kina or 40 AUD for a monthly Digicel subscription, a price tag too steep for many loyal fans.
I think it's too much. We're supposed to pay less.
I think it should be free for Papua New Guineans to watch because we Papua New Guineans were big fans of the NRL.
Online, fans are venting their frustrations. The furore has also landed PNG's biggest social media personality, Cabbage Gang, in hot water after he streamed a game via an illegal website on his socials.
So Digicel sent us a cease and desist letter for us going live during NRL games on Facebook.
While it's clear many fans are unhappy, some say they can understand the change.
As a matter of fact, nothing is free. I don't think we should blame Digicel for not allowing us to watch free.
We reached out to Digicel to comment, and they said,
Digicel PNG has purchased the exclusive rights to broadcast all NRL games in PNG. Individuals are not entitled to broadcast the games, including via social media.
Okay, let's unpack all of this as we go to Port Moresby with Belinda Cora. Hello, Bells, and thank you for joining us. Firstly, there's talks that PNG is in the running to have their own NRL team. So, will a Digicel subscription continue to shut out fans from watching a potentially historic moment?
A very important question, and a question that has been on everyone's mind in the last couple of months since Digicel had obtained the copyright to NRL, yes, but a lot of them had talked about the cost of owning a Digicel box. I think with the hard times, it's a personal choice, family choice, whether we can own a box which is at around 200 kina. It has shut a lot of NRL fans out. Those who can afford it, they can afford it. Those on the streets who can't have resorted to different ways to still watch their favorite sport.
And of those that you've spoken to, besides it being free to watch again, what's a resolution they'd be happy with?
Most have said that, and I believe it's out of maybe frustration that they want to see more NRL or one of the NRL matches probably held here in Port Moresby, especially with the sport being a favorite in the country. Not only that, it has also been sought after as a unity match. It's been able to unite a lot of tribes and a lot of clans, different people from different provinces. We're talking about 22 provinces, more than 800 languages. This sport has been able, and if you're able to come to our National Football Stadium one time, Johnson, you'd be amazed on how all these tribes from all over the country, some flying in also to Port Moresby to watch the game, have been able to watch this game and feel as one, despite differences, despite the continuous threats on living together, especially outside of Port Moresby, this game has been one that has united a lot of people. So I believe that a lot of them are hoping to have one of the matches here. Probably they would like to have a more cheaper option, I should say. So those are two of the main responses that I've got from residents here in Port Moresby who are NRL fans.
And just lastly, I got to get this in there. Now tell me, why is the New Zealand Warriors your favourite NRL team?
Johnson, very interesting question. I don't know if you're trying to spoil a Thursday afternoon for me, but, but I think I'll stick to State of Origin to bring back a lot of childhood memories, so sorry.
Thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure to have you join us. While flights to New Caledonia are being disrupted, planes have also been grounded in Vanuatu, with the national carrier now in voluntary liquidation.
Air Vanuatu has been plagued by management and financial woes, but the near-total collapse of the airline has left the country reeling, with many unanswered questions left about what happens now.
Agnes Nupou has the story.
This is the main road to the Bowerfield International Airport. Last year, nearly 80,000 tourists came to Vanuatu, many of them through this terminal. But now,
Air Vanuatu in an extreme bout of financial turbulence.
Officially been liquidated.
Voluntary administration cancelled.
Hundreds of stranded
travellers are stranded in Vanuatu.
There's one ferry a week, or you rely on Air Vanuatu to fly in and out. So with them not flying,
tourists are trapped and planes are grounded.
Thanks everyone for being here this morning.
As Vanuatu's government appoints international consultants Ernst & Young to oversee the liquidation of the national carrier. Prime Minister Charlo Salwai fronted up to the press too, saying all domestic flights are on hold while aircraft await much needed maintenance.
Last year finish, instalo fila o teman blomi, one small care blomigla, le
It's a disastrous end for Air Vanuatu. So how does a country's national airline simply collapse?
Everybody knows that Air Vanuatu has been limping along since 2017.
A month ago, Vanuatu's Finance Minister John Salong said there were no plans to liquidate Air Vanuatu, but things have changed. Mounting costs mean there's simply no money left to keep the airline afloat.
Sometimes you have to make such decisions if there's no other option.
Aviation is a tough industry to operate in, even for major players. Margins are slim and events like natural disasters and the COVID-19 pandemic can wreak havoc. Some of Air Vanuatu's woes appear self-inflicted. Since 2020, Vanuatu has had 4 different prime ministers.
Every government comes in with a different chairperson and a different CEO.
An Airbus was almost purchased in 2019, but that decision was reversed by a change in government, leaving Vanuatu with a $25 million bill and nothing to show for it. 3 tropical cyclones in recent years didn't help either.
Because of the cyclones and because of the hangover from COVID-19, really tourism numbers were depressed, and after 3 or 4 rough years, there really isn't much money left in the economy. It's just the tough operating economics of a small island nation that has limited budget and trying to sustain a national airline.
My name is Lopez Adams. I'm a social entrepreneur. We've had the disruption for too long. Politicians have their hands a lot in all the affairs of the airline. We know our local politics is not good for business. We shouldn't be worried so much about our national pride, because a private business can run a national pride for us.
Air travel is crucial to every country, but particularly Pacific nations.
Often the only form of travel is actually by air. It's crucial for maintaining family relationships, also the politics of those islands, representation, but also for the economy. A lot of Freight comes in by air and is distributed.
Many Pacific airlines have struggled to stay afloat over the years, and disruptions are common. But there are some exceptions. Fiji Airways recently posted profits double pre-pandemic levels.
Fiji has an enormous advantage in that it has a very well developed tourism product. Almost all of that tourism product is within an hour's reach of the main airport, Nadi. It also has a domestic network, and it also has a regional network into the rest of Polynesia.
So how can future issues be avoided for Vanuatu? Besides an end to political deadlock, one solution would be to separate domestic and international services, like neighbour New Caledonia has done.
Sometimes by splitting those operations, domestic and international, it becomes easier to have a joint venture partner on the international routes.
A Pacific airline industry analysis from last year recommended airlines form revenue and cost partnerships. Solomon Airlines, Air Vanuatu and Air Caledonia were keen to partner, but without the internal capability and resources to make it happen, a third party was needed.
Who knows, maybe there are going to be new investors coming in. I think there is a bright future than yesterday.
Message please start follow leaders, please you me walk one, you me put aside all political differences. Lo yun sabi karen pakaya Vanuatu pe.
In a lot of Tongan households, there's often at least one bed with lots of tapa cloth and fine mats carefully stacked between the mattress and the base. It's an important cultural responsibility for Tongan women to own these items. But now foreign knockoffs are popping up online. In Tonga, weavers can make thousands of dollars for selling these mats, but they're losing money to overseas imitations for a fraction of the price. Our Tongan reporter Marianne Kupu has the story.
Tongan women produce koloa. We weave, we make tapa. And koloa equals treasure. Women in Tonga make treasure.
Tapa cloth, fine mats, and ta'awala. In Tongan culture, all of this is koloa or treasure. Tongan women gather koloa not for wealth, but to fulfill our cultural obligations to our families and communities.
Lea koe me ko hiri, koe tu marie pe ko haki whewhine o ki ai hane koloa whakatonga.
Koloa is important because it's intergenerational, both the art form and the finished piece. We will wear them, gift them, and pass them down to future generations. But what if these pieces we so highly prize weren't being made in Tonga? This might look like a fine Tongan mat, but it was made here in this small Fala factory in Indonesia. And Facebook pages like this one constantly advertise koloa to Tongan customers around the world.
I saw on Facebook some advertising of falafihu, which is white, fine woven mat. And the thing is, it actually had Tongan motifs and also symbols that are uniquely Tongan. So I wrote them and said, how do we pay it? And the price was like a third or a quarter of what you normally pay for. I was silly and sent, that money. And then after that, they blocked me. And, it was really, really disappointing.
I just want to try it out, because these mats, they look familiar with the Tongan mats. They stole the picture from the Facebook. They see the pattern. They see that you can put kulasi on the sides. But Indonesians, they pull up the picture from Facebook and they see that fella and they will make it exactly the same fella.
Many women in Tonga take up la'alanga or weaving to financially support the families.
Pakone mau me bo fai ko mo ho ko yau ko mal pe ke ha ko ko lisi ko ma foki me pe ko stu ko nge tao wala ko ma ha pe wala la ila foka matotongi ako. I au koe ni ka pai tua whātau e whaafi ni mangea.
Ko lava la langa tau wala e taha e mahina e taha. Whami mau peki mea e whaafi ke ni maafa.
But for an Indonesian-made fala?
Right now in the market, they sell it for $400 US for 20 feet. $400 US. That's 900 paanga.
Ka ko winga e awhilahi ka kai ki he mea Indonesia. Tau ila mo tau nofo tau whonuan ko tau masiva whapaanga. Pa e pau peke tau wafe tato o whakatau mea ko unga ko ene mamaa.
Cheaper doesn't always mean better. Tongan weavers prepare their plants in a particular way, which means they'll last longer. Some buyers have shared that the Indonesian mats they purchase are prone to breaking. Tongan weavers speculate that people may have come from Indonesia to learn how to weave Tongan mats, or that they were taught by a Tongan. Either way, it's been damaging for the small business.
Pe pe auton pe hanga tau puri anga to whahalau. E lawa pea o tau te aki nau tolo a whanua o nau hangau. O toi kopi e tau mea tō whahalo a tau tolo.
I won't use the Indonesian mat for any of my application or any of my occasions.
The ABC has reached out to the Indonesian factory accused of making the mats and the alleged scam, as well as the Tongan sellers of these mats, but we've received no response.
Now, that's an interesting point that Joycelyn makes about copywriting this practice, because I know that other Indigenous cultures are already doing that. Like here in Australia, elements of Indigenous knowledge are protected by intellectual property laws. But can that be done in Tonga?
Well, Marion Kupu has spoken to Tonga's Ministry of Trade and Economic Development about this story, and they say that the practice of lalanga or weaving can't be protected because weaving is not only unique to Tonga. What can be protected are the kupesi, the Tongan designs, the traditional designs displayed on those mats. Those are unique to Tonga and the Pacific.
Well, do you think that it's possible that the Indonesian mats will one day replace the koloa?
Well, there's already a push to buy and use Tongan koloa. I don't know if it's possible to stop foreign weavers from making these copycat mats, but there needs to be a conversation between the foreign weavers and Tongan advisors so that they understand the cultural context behind the mats and what they're making.
I have a feeling that this conversation is something that will continue on, but feel free to have your say online via ABC Pacific socials.
That's our show. Thank you for joining us. Ka kite.
Ni samoa.